Hello, all. We're back. Sorry for okay, Russ. We're getting now feedback from me too.
Definitely for me. All right.
I don't know. No, we're off to a running start here, folks. It's Google Hangouts. After 4 or 5 days of being off the show, we hoped everything would be completely smooth and fine. And of course, we come back and we got glitch city, but we'll try to fight through it before Russ comes back. Kevin, I just have to share this because I had never been to Chicago before, and it was very interesting for the draft. Spending 4 or 5 days there, and one of my goals was to try deep dish pizza because I'd only heard of it and never tried it. And we went to Giordano's after the draft on Saturday, and it lived up to expectations. I thought it was pretty good. Surprisingly, I didn't have anything negative to say about it, which puts me in the minority because everybody that I've heard who from Toronto to Buffalo who has gone there and tried deep dish pizza has been just calling it, overrated, ridiculous, no big deal. I'm like, it was good. It was just different. It's different than regular pizza. That's all it is.
Well, when you hear the phrase pizza pie, it's more like a pie and not like the thin pizza that a lot of people are used to eating. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's great.
Yeah, no, I like deep dish as well. It's not it's not what I prefer, but there is nothing quite like having a pizza in Chicago. So although Giordano's there's a place, there's only about 4 of them. It begins with an M. That's the best place to have it, I think.
Yeah, and that's funny because somebody in our group put it on Facebook. We were at Giordano's and they said, "Oh, you got to try Pequod's. Oh, you got to try Geno's." Oh, there was like 4 or 5 different places, and everybody's got their favorite. And I just, I couldn't deal with that because it's like everybody was giving me feedback. I'm like, let's go to one.
Yeah, we couldn't get to everywhere.
Right. Let's just go to one and deal with it, and that was fine. And I thought it was good. Yes, let's just say this. For somebody who's eaten pizza his entire life, I'd be dead if I lived in Chicago and had to eat deep dish pizza once or twice every couple weeks because it's that thick. It's 3/4 of an inch thick of mozzarella and then your toppings. It is definitely something that as somebody who traveled there wanted to try, but I couldn't eat it all the time. It's just too much cholesterol. Anyway.
So I got one more little mini subject. So we heard the soundbite with John McEnroe talking about Serena Williams, and I think whoever interviewed McEnroe definitely led him down the wrong path because when the interviewer said, "Hey, why are we talking about Serena being the best women's tennis player? Why not just the best tennis player?" Me personally, I don't have a problem with that if we're just saying right now she's the most dominant tennis player in either sport. That's fine. I think where McEnroe sort of went wrong was when he said, "Hey, I think she would be rated about the 700th best men's player." Then he sort of sounded, and it just doesn't sound good, right? It sounded like Bobby Riggs. Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to settle this is, let John, and John McEnroe loves Serena Williams, you could tell, but let John McEnroe go out on the court and play Serena Williams. Then I think he might rate her higher.
Though, I don't know if did you see the whole audio or read the whole transcript?
I didn't read the whole transcript, but I heard extended audio.
After he said about the she couldn't beat the 700, he went on and praised her and said she could probably win some matches. It would depend on what's going on and everything else. Like he is as a guy who watches a lot of tennis because my wife loves tennis. Not so much that I rank it among my favorite sports, but I do watch it because my wife likes it. And he constantly sings her praises about how dominant she is. So I felt bad that somehow, Serena took offense by what he said, because I thought he was taken a little out of context. Like he certainly said everything that he did say that she, it's a 700th player, but I just think that he was just making a point that the game is faster and in men's tennis and so forth. But he did say afterward that he felt she could win matches. Just would depend on who was playing and how well they were playing and so forth.
And being a fan of McEnroe from back as a great commentator now, and back in the day, I remember him saying similar things when Steffi Graf was at the top of the women's game, that she was great and everything, but that if you compared her to some of the men players, that she would not have, it would not be a contest. And I always thought it was sort of setting up like a second generation Bobby Riggs, Billie Jean King type of thing, which never came off. I don't think he was trying to be insulting. I think he's just espousing what he.
But I'm saying,
all right, okay.
I think for charity they should play each other. I think it would be fun. I think Serena would be into it because they like each other. And then I think you would see how she would fare against any man, which I think would be a good thing, because I think sometimes men are afraid that women could be as good as them in sports. I'm not afraid of that. Like when I cover it, I want that. But I know there are athletes that seem to be afraid of that.
Let's get the show started.
Yep.
Hello, Hockey World. To Tuesday, 7th, 20.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Russ.
Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I'm Mike HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eck will be back later in the week. He is finishing up his tour of Europe, and we'll be back just in time for July 1st and a number of the things that are happening in the world of hockey. Now, we want to get started here. There's a lot of news to cover, and we have Kevin here to discuss it. First of all, the Hockey Hall of Fame announcements were made yesterday. 5 players, and 2 builders. Claire Drake and Jeremy Jacobs, the owner of the Boston Bruins, in the builder category. Danielle Goyette, Mark Recchi, Paul Kariya, Teemu Selanne, and Dave Andreychuk in the player category. Kevin, I think this was a pretty strong class. I've always been an advocate of Andreychuk making it, even though he's been categorized as a quote compiler, unquote. He did score over 600 goals. He had a couple 50-goal seasons. I thought he was not just an above-average player, but at times a great player. But he did last over 20 years and compiled some stats. What did you think of the class overall?
Okay. Frozen.
Yeah, Russ, why don't you start first?
Okay.
We're having some problems.
I understand the compiler part on Andreychuk, and I would call him that too. I don't know if that should keep him out, right? Like, I think that's fine. I think Dave Andreychuk's certainly worthy. The interesting thing is, it seems like younger people are hung up on Kariya. The best thing I could say about Kariya, besides always being one of the best players and most exciting players in the game, is once you start getting concussions and adding on to concussions, it robs you of your ability. It doesn't matter how many games you put in. People are now in hockey are getting hung up on numbers. Well, 500 goals, 1,000 points. But the thing is, you don't know exactly what year it was starting to rob Kariya from his great goal-scoring ability that saw him have 100-point seasons. That's why I put him in, because just because at the end result we know he had post-concussion, I think that started to sort of rob him earlier. And then Mark Recchi is another one who, you could have arguments for and against. But I have no problem with this group, and I was happy to see Goyette get in, and I thought it was really good.
Kevin, I know that there were 2 players, Recchi and Andreychuk, who were considered compilers, and that was the knock against them. But especially Andreychuk, since I saw him from the beginning of his career in Buffalo and for more than a few years in Toronto. Guy scored a couple 50-goal seasons. I thought he was a great to good player for a long time, and I thought he deserved this. What did you think of this class? I
liked it, and Andreychuk, this is the way I view it. He had 640 goals, and like 14th or 15th. I've lost track of where he is now, but we're in our 100th year of playing in the NHL, and only 13 or 14 people did. I'd say that speaks to his greatness, and it doesn't. People say, well, yeah, he played a lot of games. Well, isn't that part of being great, the longevity? Isn't that why we exalt Gordie Howe, that he played so long and so well for so long? So Problems with this list as well. I thought Paul Kariya was a spectacular player, and he won 3 championships, international hockey, and he was sort of like his entrance to the Hall of Fame was when he played. He was considered like a huge difference maker, and the same is true of Kariya. Kariya could take over a game, and so if you look beyond the numbers, he just had a special ability to take over a game. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, Kev, there is this talk, and I don't think it's correct, that, hey, Kariya's getting in because he's Solani's teammate. Believe it or not, that talk is out there, and I totally shoot that down.
Yeah, and for people who said his career wasn't long enough, I mean, okay, we've already set the precedent in baseball with a guy like Kirby Puckett, and in hockey with somebody like Cam Neely, whose career was shortened by injury, but the quality of the career was there. So I don't see I don't see the validity to the criticism that Kariya should not have been in because his career numbers weren't great enough or his career wasn't long enough. I think he was a great player, and unfortunately his career was shortened by concussions, but he was still a great player.
How many games did Kariya actually play? Like
I'll check.
I think it's more than people think it is. Like, I want to.
When you see guys like Kariya, like Andreychuk and Recchi, they eclipse a guy like Kariya in games. They do.
Yeah, well, for sure. But I think Kariya had to play close to 1,000.
I think he was just under it. That's what I think. I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now. This is great live TV, folks.
Hang on, I think I got it.
I got it. 989 career games.
Yeah. I mean, he essentially played 1,000 games when you count the playoffs. I mean, that's a pretty yardstick is 1,000 games. The one thing, just to move on from this, because I think we all agree this is a good class, and I agree with Russ about Goyette as well. That's an important addition. In fact, when this shows you how far women's hockey has come, because when I heard the name, I thought, she's not in already?
Right.
Like, we've reached that point where,
yes.
I'm surprised that she wasn't in. But, now that we have this, and a pet name about, they think, but now that we've seen this group get in, Recchi and Andreychuk and Paul Kariya, isn't Jeremy Roenick a Hall of Famer?
He's so close. Like, you could make arguments for and against. If you want to say as a U.S. player, then you say for. If he's just a hockey player, then there's so many arguments for and against. There really are.
Yeah, well, what hurts Jeremy is, he's got 500 goals, certainly. Yeah. And I think he's got the intangibles. He was hard to play against. I heard O'Neill talking on TSN radio, and I don't always agree with what he has to say. But they were talking about the host, whose name escapes me right now, was saying that he thought Alfredsson was a lock to get in. There should be, not a lock. He said he should be in the Hall of Fame. And O'Neill said, well, if Alfredsson should be in, then Roenick, because he said, I played against them both. And, basically, both offensively and defensively, and it was just hard to play against. And so I think that's intangibles. But, he never won. And people say, well, none of that should matter. But it does matter. Like, it doesn't matter for Marcel Dion because his numbers were so overwhelming.
Right.
That it doesn't really matter. But when you're splitting hairs on the guys on the cusp, and as Russ pointed out, as a guy that's sort of right on the border, then all of a sudden all that stuff matters. So he's got a silver in the Olympics, a World Cup team. He had a contract issue.
That's the stuff that should matter, Kev. But it doesn't seem like the international play matters all that much because.
Oh, it does. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like its weight as heavy as the NHL. It's not. To me, it's not.
Yeah. And Alfredsson never won either. He got to one cup final with out of their record. I mean, they were honestly perennial choke artists when it came to the playoffs in the early 2000s. But I mean, he put up great career numbers. I think it was Brian Hayes who was the host on TSN.
Well, it's funny. Russ brought up, Russ brought up about the numbers, and it is true. But it's interesting. Like, the numbers seem like if you get up to 500 goals and so forth, that seems to be a magic number. Well, it used to be goalie wins. They had magic numbers, but guys like Curtis Joseph and Chris Osgood have strong numbers and are ranked among the most winning. Yet, they have not been able to crack into it, and I'm not sure they will be able to.
What about guys with no numbers, Kev, like Kevin Lowe? Is he going to have to get in via advanced stats, even though we all know how good he was, and he just wasn't a guy that wasn't going to put up points?
Yeah, well, there's some, to me, Kevin Lowe is kind of the Bob Goldham of his time. Like Scotty Bowman always used to tell me that Bob Goldham should be in. Because he was like the forerunner of the modern day shot blocker, and he won all those cups and all that kind of stuff. And that's the way I think Kevin Lowe is. Kevin Lowe is sort of the Bob Goldham of that era, because the one thing about that defense too, I remember I did a story on this in the 80s, but Kevin Lowe was actually the one who I just said, I was looking at your defense, and it's a really big defense. Like Lowe was a big guy. I mean, not by today's standards, but back then, he was a good sized guy. Yeah. And he had a lot of guys like that. They had.
It seems like players like him, Kev, get sort of treated the same way as kickers do in the NFL Hall, in the Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or catchers in the Baseball Hall of Fame too. I mean, but and you know what? I mean, I'll always advocate for Cujo. I think even though he didn't win a cup, I thought he had a fantastic career. He was with certain teams that didn't. He carried Edmonton on their back. I think it was in '97. So I mean, I've always been an advocate of him making the Hall, but we'll see what happens going forward. Now, okay, getting to what happened over the last week here. First with the expansion draft. George McPhee was a quite busy fellow. On Wednesday, he made a number of deals up to that. I would say show on Wednesday night. I'm not going to go into how the NHL awards were presented. I just think they could have done it a lot better than having 5 picks or 6 picks each in between a couple of awards. But Kevin, he piled up a number of first-round picks. He ended up with 3 in the first round on the draft at the draft on Friday. What did you think of George McPhee's job with the expansion team?
Oh, I would give him an A+. And I've said all along that when this this expansion plan first came out, the objective of the NHL was to make this team more competitive quicker than expansion teams of the past. And, rightfully so. I mean, they paid $500 million to enter the NHL, where, when the last time we had an expansion team, it was $80 million. So, there was a good reason to give them a better shake than the teams of the past. But, it really isn't the team they have now that's going to be the difference. The assets that they were allowed to accumulate that will help expedite, their growth as a team. And boy, George really took advantage of that. Getting the 2 extra first-round picks, and then moving up in the draft in the first round to get a higher pick, and then a good power forward from Minnesota, Shea Theodore from Anaheim, a good younger defenseman that wasn't left unprotected. It was just a deal he cut. And he's added other prospects as well. And, we also give him credit, picking up Gusev. He had signed, I'm drawing a blank, Russ, help me, center from Russia.
Shipshev, yeah.
Yeah. And, Gusev played with him, and so he picks him up from Tampa Bay as well. So I thought he did a masterful job. Pierre LeBrun is reporting this, the first, I don't know, I don't want to call it a negative, but Pierre LeBrun is suggesting that he has sources that say the Senators were offering more for Mathot to keep him than George got from Dallas to move him there. So, that's the first time anyone has said anything that George. So I'm giving him an A+. I thought he did a great job. And if he didn't take that Ottawa deal, he probably had his reasons. That would be my.
No, that's a good point, Kev. Like, you can't predict that. I'll give you something. Like, to me, this is the analogy for that one. I went to a Hall of Fame game once with my wife and friends, and it was the Mets and White Sox. I walked out of that place. I'd spent $20 on a hat. Some guy walks up to my wife and I and goes, "I'll give you $40 for that hat." Without me even answering, my wife took the hat off my head and gave it to the guy and took the $40. Like, you don't know that that's going to be your best offer, but she was like, "That's it. I don't care what you paid for that hat. You're selling it." And so, yeah. And so I think McPhee felt like he was going to get more on the back end, and he didn't. Like, but he got a decent amount.
Yeah. No, it's a good. I love that deal from Dallas, by the way. Holy cow! You know.
Yeah, Dallas did well on that. Really well. I like the draft part of Vegas. I like what Vegas did in the draft, right? I think Glass is a guaranteed NHLer. He will be the face of that franchise. Suzuki will definitely make it. I think there's a question is how much impact, like, is he a star? Is he a really good player? We'll find that out. Branston will make it, but I think it'll be a little bit more of a struggle because of the size. Haig, I think, was a really smart pick in the second round because why not risk it and try and get, a really defensive guy? He's not the offensive guy people think he is, but a big guy at 6'5". So I like that. I like Zhukov. He was actually one of my favorite goalies in the draft, and he got Zhukov in the 4th round. So I felt like, all said, he did great. But I even feel really good now about the bet I made with Eck because I think 35 points for the season for Vegas, I think I'm going to win that bet. I think they're going to struggle just to get to that 35 points.
I mean, the only thing that's in Eck's favor, Marc-Andre Fleury might be able to steal some games.
35 points? They're going to get 35 points.
I don't know. We'll see. They're going to trade a lot of guys at the deadline too, Kev.
Yeah, no, I get that, but they're going to get 35 points.
And they're still going to trade some defensemen. I mean, one of the things that that McPhee said, I think it was Wednesday night, that he took more defensemen simply to move like he did with Mathot last night. I mean, there's talk about them moving Alexei Emelin, who's got another year left in his contract, and there's another defenseman who has one more year that they're going to move as well. So he's going to compile the draft picks. I mean, I just on the Mathot thing for a second because it happened last night, and I know that Mathot came out on Ottawa radio and sort of gave Dion Phaneuf a pass for not waiving the no move clause, but I know fan bases, and the fan base in Ottawa is going to turn on Dion Phaneuf because they lost Marc Mathot because he would not waive the no move clause, even though it was more than likely that Vegas was never going to take Dion Phaneuf with making $7 million for another 4 years. It's just the reality of fandom in this world, and I think he alienated himself in Calgary. He alienated himself in Toronto, and that was more because the team was really bad. It wasn't his fault. But I think he's going to alienate himself in Ottawa because of the no move clause. I think that's going to happen.
I think that's fair. Yeah, because I don't think they would have taken him either.
Here's an interesting one.
I don't see that. Not without.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just don't think they would have taken him without some sort of incentive.
Sure.
They would have given
an interesting one. I think Vegas did better than Nashville in their inaugural draft. I'll read you off some of the names for Nashville, like David Legwand, Denis Arkhipov, Jeff Koch, Kent Sauer, Martin Beauchenet, Craig Brunel, Martin Bartek, and Carlos Scratskins. If you remember, he was the Iron Man.
Right.
I think Vegas got more talent in their draft than Nashville did in theirs.
Yeah,
it could be. I mean, that wasn't a good draft. I mean,
no.
Okay. Now we mentioned the Islanders trading. They were one of the teams that traded a first-round pick to Vegas to take on Mikhail Grabovski's contract. Garth Snow was rather busy, Kev. He flipped Ryan Strome to Edmonton for Jordan Eberle. Purportedly that's the winger that will convince John Tavares to sign an extension. I'm not sure. I'm just being a little facetious there because I don't think that's enough. But then he trades Travis Hamonic to Calgary for a first and a couple seconds. I don't see the great improvement with the Islanders. In fact, I think they're significantly worse than they were, say, 2 weeks ago. What do you think?
Well, I think that from the Islanders' perspective, I like that trade. Although, saying that, I've now talked to some people who say that, like, the way I view Eberle is he's a one-dimensional player. He's a scorer, but he has scored 20 goals a bunch of times, and they need 20 goals. I haven't seen anything out of Strong suggest that he's going to be a 20-goal scorer. Now,
Sure.
What Edmonton is saying is well, put him with our guys, and he'll do better than Eberle. But what I thought it was a good trade for the Islanders, and I thought that the Oilers would get more for Eberle. Hamonic, I just think they decided that they needed to get some assets for him. It's he said he wanted to be traded, and then he rescinded it, but it's pretty clear he wanted to go west. And I think they're going to use his money to do something else in the free agent marketplace. So they're not kept their forwards. Lose Brock Nelson. Their defense is pretty good. They wanted with his big shot, so they got rid of Hamonic. I still think the Islanders can make a run.
I think they're a good team, but they're sort of at net zero money-wise, which scares me that they have a self-imposed cap. Like, they're showing that now, because otherwise I don't love the trade for Hamonic. And I'm a futures guy, right? But the idea is, with Hamonic making as little as he makes, there should have been an NHL body involved in that deal. Even if you take away a second, you should have gotten a body. The fact that they didn't makes me think that they didn't want to add the salary, Kev, because otherwise I think they didn't get enough for Hamonic in that regard. I like Eberle, and I think what you said about Strome, what others were saying, he really is a high-skilled guy, but he just didn't click with anybody for some reason on the Islanders. If he finds the right guy to click with, he could score 18 goals. Like, I'm pretty sure of that. But it's been difficult to find that guy. But he really is a high-skilled passer and a very good skater. And so I just think that part's been askew. But I think the Islanders are marginally better, which means they're definitely in the contention for playoffs. I would like to see how much money they're going to spend in the offseason, because I don't think it's going to be much. We'll see, though.
Well, they cleared the Grabowski contract, which I think was $5 to $5.5 million, and spent a first-round pick to clear it. But the Eberle deal, Eberle made $3.5 million more than Strome did, and that's about the amount of the contract that Hamonic had.
Right.
So that part of it was a complete wash. So, I mean, they have the depth on defense, and if a guy like Pulak or Mayfield or whoever comes in and replaces Hamonic, and there's a good – Hamonic is a pretty good defenseman, a right-hand shot, dependable, stayed home, and is really good. So I don't know really if they improve themselves. If Eberle scores 40 goals playing on Tavares' wing, then they improve themselves. But
they improve themselves if they get a player for the same amount as, let's say, Grabowski, that makes them a lot better. Then I'll say, hey, you know what? You really improved yourself. I think Calgary improved themselves immeasurably. Like, Calgary now really is going to be one of the tougher teams out there. I think they're going to be a team that we have to sort of remember them when we do our predictions when the year starts, because now I think Calgary's getting dangerous.
Well, they're following the Nashville model, Kevin. Now they've loaded up. They've got that top four defense now with Brody, Hamonic, Hamilton, and Giordano. They've got Mike Smith in goal, who's I don't think is as good as Pekka Rinne, but they seem to be following the Nashville model in terms of the defense and the goaltending. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I liked them last year. I predicted good things for them last year because I thought they were a rising team, and now they're – what's really fun is, and I don't know if people are talking about this already, but the Battle of Alberta is going to be alive and well again.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is going to be fun. Because obviously the Oilers are a great team and a rising team, and I think Calgary's better than expected. They got to the front, and that defense is clearly in the top three in the West, which makes it in the top five in the league. Do we have any, 1 to 4 defenses in the East? Am I forgetting someone who measures up to the 3 in the West now with Anaheim, Nashville, and Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, Washington might have, but they're going to go through a reorganization. So
no, they would have too, but they have Carlson, Niskanen, Orlov. Tampa's just good with, obviously.
Tampa might be the team, but we have to sort of see it.
But now, I don't even know who do we even say is their third defenseman now. Garrison's gone. Coburn, is it Coburn? So
it could be Coburn, it could be Cuckoo, depending on how he looks in camp. He's got a lot of promise in my eyes.
And Sergachev might make the team as a 19
Sergachev
or
could
20.
be that guy too.
Yeah. Now we knew that the Black changes, there had been stuff out there about them moving a core piece. Now we didn't see the Marian Hossa situation with this skin problem, and unfortunately it sounds like his career is probably over with that unless there's some medical breakthrough and he can put the equipment back on without having any adverse effects. But Kevin, they trade Yarmulson to Arizona for Connor Murphy and Laurent Dauphin, and then they swap Panarin for Brandon Saad, and nobody saw that one coming. What did you think of these?
Well, I mean, I guess I have two thoughts on it. Number one, very to be sure, and basically it was done to get younger. I mean, Saad is younger than Panarin, and I also think the element of getting Jonathan Toews reinvigorated was part of it as well. Obviously, he played his best hockey when he had Saad. I think they find Saad to be a little grittier and feistier, and I think they think he'll playoff team, and he'll Jarmison north of 30 now, and that they need to get younger on defense. I mean, they certainly look like a very old team, and Connor Murphy's a decent defenseman. But my biggest point is this: like, I've seen all this criticism of Bowman, and then Rutherford for getting the tough guy, giving up the first round pick, which really traded 20 spots. I think it was 31 to 51. Right. So he traded 20 spots. But at what point, considering those two guys own 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cup championships, at what point do we step back and say, maybe we ought to give these guys the benefit of the doubt? I mean, Stan Bowman has won 3 championships, rebuilt twice to win, and stayed competitive longer than they say you should be able to do that. So if Bowman thinks this is what they ought to do to change on the fly here, I think we owe it just to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, all right, try it your way and see what happens. Same thing with Rutherford. Like, I just couldn't believe how fans in Pittsburgh were so unhappy about this. When the way I view it is a couple of things. First of all, I think Reeves actually can play a little bit. Now, I think it's Sullivan told me he felt he could take a regular shift and play on that team, which means on the 4th line, that he plays well enough defensively to do that. But I thought this was a message to both the league and maybe to Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby does it all for them. And I think Jim Rutherford just wanted to tell Sidney Crosby, hey, we're going to take care of you. If the league won't, we will. And, even if it doesn't come to pass, if he ends up in the press box, sometimes those messages are very important to your superstars. I mean, but my bottom line is this: 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cups belong to those 2 guys. If those are the moves they think, I'm ready to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Sure. Here's 2 things that were interesting. Joel Quenneville leaving the building when Yarmulson got traded, and I guess he got word of all these changes. Either he needed some air or he wasn't totally happy with this, Kev.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah.
So that's one thing. Something for the Chicago side. Laurent Dauphin got a little bit rushed to the NHL, but this kid has blazing speed, and he's very adaptable, and he is a guy who could score some goals. You put him with the right player. He's only 22 years old. There's still a lot of things Laurent Dauphin can still do in the NHL to sort of contribute, and I think there's some hidden points there for Chicago that Arizona wasn't able to take advantage of because they don't have those same kind of players that could bring him along. There was no one to bring him along there in Arizona, where in Chicago there is.
Well, there's still, I mean, there's still moves to be made. I mean, from there are some indications that they're still going to trade, the Blackhawks are still going to trade Marcus Kruger. He's got a $2 million signing bonus on July 1, and they may be waiting to pay that before they move him someplace. They're also supposedly one of many teams that have put in an inquiry about Carl Alsner. And if they go that way, then essentially they're replacing Yarmulson with someone else, with another veteran. I mean, right now you can't. I don't think you can be a realistic contender with just Seabrook and Keith. You have to have at least 3 and maybe 4 solid defensemen. And right now, after Murphy's okay, but I don't think he comes up to the level of Yarmulson. And yeah, I think they're going to need to add at least 1 defenseman and maybe 2 to be to get back to where they were in terms of it being a contender. Now, Russ, the other big deal was the Derek Stepan Antti Ranta deal to Arizona, 7th overall pick, and Anthony DeAngelo. What did you think of that deal?
Well, we all knew Stepan was. Oh, go ahead, Kev.
Go ahead, Russ.
Okay.
It's Rangers, your team. Start.
Well, we all knew Stepan would get traded if there was a team that was willing to take him based on the salary, not the talent. The talent's still there, but the compete level in the playoffs was a little worrisome, and then I think that's what the Rangers were a little worried about. Plus, they probably felt like they needed to get bigger up the middle, because now with teams like the Leafs and other teams like that are bigger up the middle, they were starting to suffer in the faceoff circle and in other areas just on the ice. I think DeAngelo is a really interesting one. He lives close by to me. I followed him pretty closely. He's an amazing skater and a great passer and can really move the puck up the ice. Now, people want to talk about his off-ice stuff. He was a kid. I think that stuff has passed, and I think the Rangers locker room will make sure that stuff has passed. So I don't think that's an issue, because anytime anybody's come in, they've never had a problem. They've got guys that could settle down the room. He's got to work on his hockey IQ and just the risk-reward part of his game a little bit. But if he works out right, you've got something in the vein of like what you had in Keith Yandel for, as part of a trade. And I think that was smart. The Rangers got a first-round pick out of it. They needed to get into the upper part of the first round. What I think they did with Elias Anderson was they took one of the guys that was closer to the NHL than some of the other guys that were there. Middlestad's clearly not close. Velarde with his skating is not close. Anderson's already 200 pounds, has already been playing against men, was already scoring goals in the World Juniors, already looks sure on his feet. He might only need a year to get to the NHL, and I just have a feeling that played into it a bit.
Yeah, Anthony DeAngelis, he may make it. He certainly has the offensive ability to be a contributor and to be sort of the defenseman that the Rangers are looking for. This is his 3rd team already. He's a young man, and there's too big of a. Tampa moved him out to Arizona, and now Arizona moved him out as well. And that's always, sends up warnings. Now, Russ makes a good point. He's a young man. Maybe he'll figure it out. But, I know people have already delved into his Facebook and found it, concerning, to say the least.
I think that's unfair, Kev. Imagine if they dealt into my Facebook and they saw some of the posts like, I hate a particular food, or I hate, like, you can't look at that and think that it really means anything, to be honest.
That seems to be like the overall thing that had, like, on this weekend there were a couple first-round picks who made postings on Facebook or on Twitter from 2 or 3 that were just like immature little things being said. I mean, who cares?
I think you guys better go look at his Facebook. It's probably been deleted now, but
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are not just. This is something that the Coyotes had to talk to him about.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't the political part, or okay.
Yeah. Just some stuff.
All right.
But anyway, one of the final thing I would say is, I thought, and this is ironic because the Coyotes did not look good the way they handled Doan and the way the Tippett came down. And everybody's looking at them and their new 100% owner and Barrelman and going, what's going on there? And Chaika kind of saved them by making these trades that, really will help this team. Because, we can argue all day whether Derek Stepan is a legitimate #1 center. He's not a true #1 center, but on that team, they have been looking for a decade for a guy who can do what he can do. So he'll help him there, and Hjalmarsson, is with his good friend now. He'll be paired and giving Ekman Larsson a good partner as well, and they believe in Ranta. Now they swear, I'm not sure I see it this way, but they swear that Ranta was their #1 ranked goalie.
I'm not buying it.
No,
but anyway, I thought Chaika did a pretty good job. They've got a lot of good young players. Getting one more player, even at 7, you know what? It's tough. So, and they've got to prove themselves. So, what Chaika did, I thought he did a nice job.
Stepan will help bring players along. That's for sure. He's good at that.
The other major deal that was made, and then I want to get to the draft and what may happen in the next few days. The other major deal was Braden Shen getting moved from the Flyers to St. Louis. The Flyers got a conditional one. They got the 27th pick overall in this draft, and they got Laterre winger. Kevin, I like Braden Shen. I've liked Braden Shen since he was drafted by the Kings. I think he's a pretty good pro. Maybe he's making a little too much at $5.1 million, but I don't get this deal. I think it's a big win for St. Louis.
Tremendous win. Like I'm bullish on Ron Hextall. Like I like, it's so funny because when he was a player, he was an emotional power cake, and as a general manager, very calculating, and he's very careful and cautious. And I think that's have needed after years of just kind of knee-jerk reaction. So I thought he was the right. They needed this deal from the Flyers' perspective. They take on a guy that St. Louis felt like they weren't going to be able to get rid of in Laterre, and they a hockey player. And I know they got good young players, and they added another one coming in. But is that a reason to move out a guy who's, I think, what does he have, 51 goals in the last 2 seasons?
I can tell you what the reason is. They tired of his play 5-on-5. Literally last year, so many of his goals came on the power play that I think that really they counted that against him. They did.
Well, you need guys to score on the power play. There's so many power plays that aren't clicking in this league that whether you get them 5-on-5 or on the power play, you're still scoring goals. So I didn't like it. I completely agree with Mike on this.
I do too. I'm not in disagreement with him.
Yeah, I just didn't. I did not like this trade. I thought Doug Armstrong hit it out of the park.
He did. They actually hit it out of the park for the draft.
Yeah. They
had one of the best drafts I've ever seen them have.
Yeah. No, they get the Russian kid like late. Right.
Yeah, they got Klim Kostin late, which was tremendous. I mean, I just loved it. I loved getting Robert Thomas. Yeah. They did well. And you know what? St. Louis needs that. They need a little propping up at the moment because they could have started turning the other way.
Yeah. All right, just touching quickly on a couple of the draft things. Nico Hischier goes #1, Russ. The Red Wings take Michael Rasmussen at #9. That was sort of, one of the picks that was a little bit controversial. Mm-hmm. And I have to say the Maple Leafs, it's funny. All my reason for advocacy for the Maple Leafs to miss the playoffs rather than make the playoffs was so they could get themselves a top defenseman in this draft like Timothy Liljegren, and then they end up at 17, making the playoffs, picking 17th, and ending up getting Timothy Liljegren. So everything's turning up aces for the Maple Leafs. What were your thoughts on Hischier picked over Patrick #1 and the other picks?
Yeah, it turns into personal preference. They're both great players. They are different. I wasn't shocked. Because it wasn't there's not that much of a drop off that we're talking about. It's a difference of one guy, as in Hischier, will probably score more points per season, and one guy in Patrick will play a tougher, probably better all-around game when you're counting faceoffs, right? So it's really just a matter of what you wanted or what you wanted to market. And I think the Devils wanted to market someone like Hischier, which I get. I do. I think Patrick's a little dull. but that doesn't make him a dull hockey player. He's a great hockey player. But I think Hischier is a good marketing tool, and I think that's another key that I think the Devils looked at and said, hey, you know what? He's got everything else, but we also can do that. And the Devils do need to market better, and I think Josh Harris has really made a great effort in the offseason to market his team better, and I think they're starting to do that. And I think Hischier is the start of that. And so I'm happy for them. I think they did well. And so, yeah, I mean, it was the first time I was wrong since 2006, and I'll be wrong again. Thank you.
Kevin, Rasmussen at number 9 for the Red Wings. I know that in some circles that was controversial. They thought that was a bit of a reach. What did the Wing? What did you hear about the Wings and that?
Well, I mean, it's essentially a lot of. I think Bob McKenzie's drafting had him ranked right at 9, but I mean, Big probably scored most of his goals on the power play, and I know. Kyle Woodley for Red Line Report, who has done some work for USA Today for us, had said, who liked him a lot, but said that he was concerned because this season they didn't see the same level of playmaking that they had seen in a previous season. Now, obviously, he got hurt too, but he seemed to be content to kind of use his size to score goals, where in the previous year he had try to be more of a playmaker. But this could be a home run. I mean, a 6'6" center, he has offensive ability. I think fans believing that the Red Wings need to sort of rebuild, maybe not down to the chassis the way that the Maple Leafs did, but they felt like you can't. They didn't want him to take any chances. Like they would, I think fans would have preferred them take Velarde. Now, Velarde had his own issues because I think people skating. But the one thing about Velarde is that he had gotten it done. Even without speed, somehow he always found a way to get there and make the play. And I think the Detroit fans, and Windsor, of course, is right across the border, so Detroit fans were very familiar with Velarde. And because he had performed at a high level, where to them Rasmussen seems like a bit more of a roll of the dice. And then the fact that their second pick was not rated very highly, even though a lot of teams told the Red Wings that they were very interested in the guy. The Swedish defenseman that
I gotta look and see who they took. I forget.
Yeah. But they did get the goalie that I think everybody thought was one of the top 3 goalies. So
I had him rated second. Petruszli.
Yeah.
I really like him. He had one of the larger wingspans at the draft. He's like one of those. Kev, you would relate to this, I think, in the sense that we've seen a lot of goalies come out of like the Massachusetts area, and they just know how to be a goalie. They don't care about anything else that's going on in the world. They only care about being a goalie, and he's good at it. And he's pretty fast for his size. So I thought Tyler Wright hit it out of the park with that one. And look, Rasmussen's Rasmussen. We'll see what happens down the road. I got to see who the defenseman is out because I'm forgetting who they took.
Well, while you're looking for that, let me just talk about Liljegren for a second. It's really a coup for the Leafs to get somebody who was ranked. I think it was either second or third when people were looking at the draft a year ago. He fell to 17, and now there were reasons he did fall to 17. He had mono. He moved from, I think he played for 4 teams last year in the SHL in the lower leagues. He only started to play better late in the year, but he's got the skill set. He's got the hockey IQ. He's got the speed. He's going to go back to Sweden this year. Asked the question of Mark Hunter, asking him whether there was going to be more stability in Sweden for him this year, and he thought that there would be. He's looking forward to playing at the World Junior in Buffalo, and then he intends to try to make the Leafs in 2018. Now, obviously, Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello will have a lot to say about it, and more than likely, a 19-year-old is not going to make the Leafs unless he's stupendous, and he could very well be. But the skill set and the potential is there for Liljegren, but it's not something that's going to solve the Leafs' defensive problems right away. They're going to have to do that via trade and free agency.
Yeah, I love the kid. He was my top-ranked guy, and I think he will prove a lot of people wrong. He's already got a chip on his shoulder, and I think this year we'll see tremendous play out of him. The player that Kev was talking about is Gustav Lidstrom, And yeah, he's good. I mean, that's a good pick. Actually, to be honest, to throw up as a 193rd pick, Brady Gilmore, Doug's kid, that's a pretty good pick because he's just undersized. But what if he is even half of what, you know, the old man is? I mean, you know, down the line for a 7th round pick, you throw it up there. That's a smart pick.
Yeah, his dad was drafted in the 7th round, and he was undersized, and look what happened. He was a Hall of Famer. So yeah, that was a risk well worth taking. Now, the quick hits here. We got about 5 to 10 minutes left to go here. We're approaching Saturday. There's going to be a number of things floating out there. You know, free agents are able to talk to other teams. Kev, some of the interesting stories. First one, Colorado. They didn't move Matt Duchene. Apparently, I've heard from Pierre LeBrun, I've heard from Darren Drager that Matt Duchene just wants out of there, and the people are wondering why Joe Sakic hasn't moved. I mean, have you heard anything regarding potential movement of Matt Duchene?
Well, they just want too much. I mean, that's the bottom line. Here's what I have to say about the Avalanche. Like, okay, you know, maybe you're making your decision that you're not going to trade Matt Duchene. I don't know why even this all started. Like, you know, didn't they learn their lesson from, you know, Riley? You know, like to me, you had 2 good building blocks in McKinnon and Duchene. But to me, what's bothersome is that, you know, they were so far below the second worst. They've done nothing to improve themselves. Like, where's this aggressiveness? Is trying to get better, and I have not seen that out of Joe Sakic. And you know, he is such a respected man in hockey that it's just shocking. And I think this really speaks to you know, is the owner, you know, we got to do something. Like, don't the fans of aggressiveness? I mean, shouldn't they have cut a deal for? I mean, their defense is not good enough, obviously. Shouldn't they have cut a deal for one of these defensemen that George McPhee is moving? Like, the fact that they've done nothing to me is very bothersome, even more so than the fact they haven't traded Duchene.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I will say this. Look, they drafted Cale Makar, who, if everything were to hit right, he could be the best defenseman in the draft, right? So they did address that for years down the road, not for today. So they did do that. So we'll say they did okay in the draft. And actually, Dennis Smirnov, who played for Penn State, is a heck of a player, and to get him in the 6th round is a really good pick. We watched him in the playoffs, and he looked really good. Connor Timmins, a pretty good player, also a defenseman. So I think they drafted well for defense, and Smirnov's a right winger, just so people don't get confused. So they drafted well for defense. They just haven't helped them today for defense. Look, you keep Matt Duchene, you're not hurting yourself. Rantanen's going to get better. Maybe in free agency they will pick up somebody, but they should have traded for Methot. That's where I'm with Kevin and say that's the kind of guy they need, because then he could sort of reel in Tyson Barrie a little bit, or at least help the pairing of Tyson Barrie and make him look better. That's the part where if you're going to compete in the West at some point, you have to improve that. And you've got to get some guys who could play just stone cold defense and be a little tough. And they're not there.
What kind of message does it send to the players and to the fans if you do nothing?
Yeah.
You know,
well, in fact, they might be going the opposite direction, Kevin. There have been rumors out there about them shopping Tyson Barrie. I mean, you know, you need 6 defensemen. He's probably your number 2 behind Eric Johnson. If you trade him, who the hell do you have on defense? So I don't understand.
Russ is absolutely right. If they bring in Methot and play in with Barrie, I mean, that's the sort of compliment that you need when you have an offensive guy like that. So
I will say this, though, and they're going to take a hit when Will Butcher gets picked up August 15th by some team, because they really mistreated him in the sense that they didn't show enough interest early, and they're going to lose him. But on the plus end, you know, Tyson Jost was more than a point a game for North Dakota. He got in 6 games with the Avs. He's going to get a long, hard look this year too. And if he has improved physically, like I think he probably did, even from just a year in college and over this summer, he's going to have a chance to make that team, and he will make that team better if he's ready.
Now, interesting happenings with Montreal in the wake. You know, they make the Drouin deal. There hasn't been any movement on Alex Galchenyuk, either contract or trade. Now, the 2 Russian players, the 2 prominent Russian veterans on their team, Alex Radulov is asking for $7 million. He's asking for $7 million over 6 years, which is hilarious in and of itself. And now Andrei Markov comes out this morning, Kevin, and says he wants a 2-year deal, making a little more than he made last year, which was 5.75, and he's a 35-plus guy. So, Mark Bergevin's in trouble here because I don't think he can pay either one of them with Carey Price as an impending UFA next year. I don't envy Mark Bergevin right now.
No, I agree with you, and it's just too much money. And to be honest with you, Radulov, that, in my opinion, would be Vegas. And maybe that's the way they want to go. They've got a Russian center. So, that's a possibility, I guess. But, if I'm Bergevin, what I say to Radulov is circle back. Just, you owe us that. We brought you over here, and go out, try to make your best deal and come back. Because they'd like to stay there. And I'm sure Radulov liked it there. I mean, he basically reinvented his NHL career there. So, it may be better for him to go out and explore and see what he can do. And then he may find out that that's just too much money. I mean, TJ Oshie would have been the best in the place. Much more so even than Shattenkirk. And he settled for 5.75. Now, I mean, he got 8 years, but that's below what Radulov is looking for.
Yeah, I can't pay Radulov. And Markov had a really good year, but I can't pay him that much either. Like, I'm basically going to ride it out with Markov and just say, sorry, can't touch that. I mean, I'm not even going. He can't even go there. It's not even worth it to go there. Let somebody else make that mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, Russ, team out is Andrei Markov, 2 years at $6 million. I know there are teams out there that would give him one. But I don't, Dave Nonis is not a general manager in this league anymore. He's the one who signed Stefan Robidoux for 3 years after 2 broken legs at 38 years old. I don't think anybody's signing Andrei Markov for 2 years.
Right.
No, I agree. Yeah, for sure. You're hearing that all the way around the league. I've heard people already squawking about Alzner's wanting, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think Alzner's going to sit out there for a little while. I do.
Well, and then that was one of the other. I mean, 2 more things. The one was Alzner and Shattenkirk apparently getting multiple inquiries. The question with Shattenkirk is, does anybody, will that sort of bidding war get him up to what a lot of people thought he was going to get, which was in the neighborhood of 7? I don't think that's going to happen simply because he didn't follow through with a great playoff, and maybe some teams are scared of the lengthy deal and paying that kind of money. But Russ, the Rangers seem to have, with the step-on deal and with other moves that they made, to be clearing the space for either Shattenkirk or Kovalchuk.
Yeah, or both. Here's the thing. I think one of the players who took the biggest beating over the weekend, who isn't even playing or being drafted, was Kevin Shattenkirk. I heard on multiple stations, because we were driving through multiple states, people just talking about how he can't play defense. Okay, let's just analyze that for a minute. There have been so many defensemen in the NHL that you would say are average to marginal on defense, but give you great power play and will score 10 to 12 to 15 goals and will get you a certain amount of points. That, you know what, teams don't care that you can't do that if you've got someone to pair him with. They could pair him with Ryan McDonagh. So at the end of the day, you don't really have to worry about what Kevin Shattenkirk can't do on defense. He certainly can skate and everything else. You do have to worry about the coach playing him on the top pairing, because he didn't even play Keith Yandle on the top pairing. He played him on the third pairing, which was bizarre for most of the time that he was there. And that's on Alain Vigneault. But I'm just saying, is he my number one choice for the Rangers? No, because I don't want to see a guy with that kind of contract. But at the end of the day, can they overcome that with Ryan McDonagh? Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
I think the Rangers are out. I mean, this is they just got out of this mess by paying.
Evan, if you know anything about the Rangers, just because they got out doesn't mean they won't get right back in.
Yeah, in the sense that they're not going to do that.
Okay,
but it's just a guess. So hey, guys, I got to run.
Okay.
Yeah. See you later.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Russ, it's the line from The Godfather 3. Just when I thought I was out, you pulled me back in. The last thing, Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau. There have been a number of little inquiries, inklings out there that Thornton is talking to other Southern California teams, to teams in the East. Marlowe, that they're looking for 3 years. Russ, until one of them signs someplace, I do not believe any report that they're not signing in San Jose. I think they're just trying to milk as much as they can out of the Sharks. They want to get a little more money, a little more term. I think they both want to stay there. I just think this is all a shell game.
I got to tell you something. Even if I'm the Sharks, I want to see his medicals, and I want Joe to come in for a private workout. No joke. I'm not being a jerk about this. Before I sign him to a 3-year deal. I want to see what this ACL recovery is looking like. I want my team doctors to tell me what they think the upside and the downside is, because we can't just take it for granted that Joe Thornton's going to be Joe Thornton again. We don't.
Don't you think that they've been monitoring this? I mean, he's their pro. I mean,
how much can you monitor it? It's the off season.
I think he's still living in San Jose. I mean, I don't think
it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't know what I'm up to day to day, and we do a show together. They don't know what he's doing every day.
Right. Well, that's very true. And let me just for the Leaf fans out there, I know I've been getting some messages from friends on Twitter, anxiously awaiting the Maple Leafs moves. They struck out on Hamonic. Mark Mathot blocked any interest from Montreal and Toronto because of his no trade clause. Now you're moving sort of to secondary targets. I mean, Vatanen is out there, but Anaheim doesn't really have to trade him, but they may want to trade him because they have to sign Fowler to an extension. There might be somebody like Scandella or Dumba on the block in Minnesota for cap reasons. And I know that reading Russo's piece today, they're looking for a winger, more of a fourth line, third line guy, but maybe that's where somebody like a JVR fits in. Pierre LeBrun floated an interesting one, Russ, and I think with the general changeover philosophy in Florida right now, and a guy like Jason Demers might make a bit of sense for the Leafs. He's only making $4.5. It's 4 years left. He's a right-hand shot. He can move the puck. It's not an onerous contract, and it's one of those guys who Dale Talon seems that he wants to move because it was the other management team that signed him. So that might be conducive to the Leafs getting somebody for not pennies on the dollar, but for a reasonable price. And that's probably a better option than going out in free agency and signing Cody Franzen or something like that as a free agent, or Brendan Smith, who's probably going to ask for more than $4 million a year.
Boy, if he asks for $4 million a year, I don't even think the Rangers will take him back at that. Like, I just don't. I don't think Brendan Smith's worth that. I don't care what the average NHL defenseman's worth. I don't think he's worth that.
He's the number 3 free agent in terms of defensemen. I mean,
it's because it's weak. It's not because he's good.
Oh, I know, but the whole point is that when it's
okay,
a weak
and he's physical, and that's why the Rangers liked him. But that's still, And here's the funny thing, okay, and we could go back to other guys whose offense hasn't panned out, like John Moore and everybody else. He has a great shot. It's completely inaccurate, and so it doesn't matter how much he can wind up and how good it looks. He's not scoring a lot of goals at the NHL level. He's not. Yeah. And I think that's the part that sometimes fans have a hard time getting over, is the fact that, well, look at this guy's shot. But it's like as an example, John Moore, right? We always heard about his shot. He's got 12 goals in his career.
Brendan Smith.
Sorry. He had 12 last year. Sorry. So that was a big year for him, actually. But we'll see if he can continue it.
Brendan Smith is a 20 to 25 point defenseman, and I cannot see. And to my mind, he's an average defensive defenseman. He's not an above. He's not a shutdown guy, and he's not a power play guy. He's a second power play guy, and he's maybe at best a second pairing guy, and maybe better even suited as a bottom pairing guy. So that's not something somebody I would say signing for $4 million makes sense. But in this market, he could get it. So
Moore's got 25 in his career. He had 12 last year. So we'll see if that was a career year or not. But like with Smith, same thing. Big shot, but didn't really put in any goals for the Rangers. They had a few.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Kevin Allen for coming on the show. We will be back tomorrow. It'll be Russ, myself, and Anthony Mangione, who is our partner on our Off the Post podcast.
Yep.
We'll be, and hopefully there will be something. Well, we'll go more in depth about the draft, and I'm sure there's going to be some news occurring in the next 24 hours to talk about.
If nothing else, I hope Anthony will bring his cheese knowledge. The cheese game is strong with him.
Yes, we can have an in-depth discussion about Limburger and mozzarella. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Ugello. Thanks. Without the buzz, it's just hockey.